Aston Martin. Horrible pre-season test.
The mood in camp definitely wasn't great.
Everybody is talking about this Ferrari rear wing.
We don't know as we speak whether they're going to run that in Melbourne or whether they'll run it at all this season.
And he just put his arm inside the cockpit with his camera, click, click, click.
They basically don't want to show their full hand.
And then saw what he had. And it was like, we've got him.
Lewis potentially retiring, Max potentially leaving F1.
They've proven that, they're not playing games.
The steering wheel was missing, the wing mirrors were missing, anything that could be taken from the car.
Ferrari could qualify on the back row of the grid and be leading the Grand Prix by turn 1.
Up to speed.
Well, we are all back together again for another episode. Jolie, you weren't with us for our last episode, but it's good to have the band back together.
She's too much in demand.
Too in demand.
Well, I was away with one of our teams we're going to be talking about a lot today.
Lovely. Well, this is going to be episode 4. Looks like the Max episode is getting a lot of love, over 500,000 views. If you guys haven't checked it out, then please head over to YouTube, check it out, or wherever you get your podcasts. What did you guys think of it, how it's gone down?
Well, I think I said at the time, I just love how open he is. He feels safe with us because we've known him a long time. We're not going to throw any curveballs in there. We admire his success, but we need to know, what does he think of these new regs? What is his hopes and desires? How long is he going to be around? And I think he was pretty forthright in his answers.
Yeah, and that's really reflected in the comments. They always say, don't read the comments. We always read the comments. And my favourite ones were the ones that said, I hate this podcast. I hate this interview because it's made me fall in love with someone that I thought I hated.
Oh, no.
And it's lovely because that's exactly what you guys did. You drew that side out of him that, those of us who've known him for a while, we know it's there, but you managed to display that for all to see. And that's why I think it's so good. It was such a great interview.
And I think that's exactly what we want to do here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people can form opinions about what these drivers, team principals, mechanics, whoever it is that you look upon in F1, you can draw an opinion of them. But when you actually meet these people, they're all just humans and they're all actually really lovely. So it's nice to be able to bring that side of Max out. And as you say, hopefully have converted some people into new Max fans. Well
Actually, just picking up on that, you're absolutely right. They're all just humans. Why do we put people on pedestals?
You see, you don't understand this, DC, because you're one of those people that we put on a pedestal.
You guys keep kicking me before I come in the studio.
It's because 99.999999% of people on Earth will never have and will never be able to compute how you do what you do. And it's why we love the sport. It's why we put you guys on pedestals, because you are able to do this thing that we love and we could never do.
Wow, this is very wholesome to start the day.
The kumbaya.
Right, yeah. You can tell we all really love each other.
Yeah.
We've got lots to discuss today, don't we, Will?
We do. We've got a heap to discuss because final pre-season testing is done and dusted, and now we are heading into Australia. So who's hot and who's not? I'm going to start with Ferrari because they are the testing Formula One world champions, which we know means absolutely nothing at all. But let's start outright pace. They topped the test. As we were saying on our podcast episode, the regulations have changed this year. Now, every time the drivers hit a straight, they're able to open the rear wing and the front wing, reduce the drag, reduce the downforce, increase top-line speed. Every team, that rear wing opens. Ferrari's doesn't just open. It flips 180 degrees and goes upside down. Now, what does that do? Right? The basics of aerodynamics in Formula One are the opposite of wings on aeroplanes. Wings on aeroplanes are designed to provide lift and launch them up into the sky. Wings on Formula One cars are upside down and designed to push the cars down onto the track and increase grip. So this wing flipping 180 essentially turns it into an aeroplane wing and induces lift. And that tiny little winglet at the bottom just helps to keep those tyres down on the ground so the rear tyres aren't lifted up into the air. It's incredibly smart. It means the Ferrari is lightning in a straight line. And as we saw from their practice starts, the Ferrari off the line, I don't know if you guys saw the last video of this, because it's madness.
I mean, who didn't see it?
You've got all the other cars lined up, row 1, row 2, row 3. Lewis is back on like row 10.
I think he started from
11,
9th.
12. I think he started
There were
from
gaps
Qatar.
between each row as
Like
well.
he wasn't even in Bahrain anymore.
Yeah,
and by the time they got to turn 1, Lewis was P1.
Yeah.
The way it looks at the moment, Ferrari could qualify on the back row of the grid and be leading the Grand Prix by turn 1. Like, that's how good that car looks off the line.
But the saving grace, though, for anyone who's thinking, well, that's going to make a mockery of qualifying, Melbourne, short run to the first corner,
Yes. Yep.
narrow racetrack, and quite a tight, short apex corner, which we've seen incidents in the past. So I don't think we'll see the dominance of a start in Melbourne. But it reminds me of, through the history of time, 15 years in Formula One, when you come with an innovation that gives you a real advantage over the others, it feels good. It's like
Right.
that little secret, potion of power. And there was a time at McLaren where we had what was called the third brake.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
Of course, there's a brake in each corner, but we had the normal brake pedal, and then we had a third pedal, which we could, with a little solenoid switch on the steering wheel, put it to brake the left rear or the right rear. So it actually worked like a tank track. So a tank
So it
turns
induced a bit of
by
steering.
slowing down one side of the car. So we learned to sort of balance the car at high speed by throttling and braking together, but it would only brake the inside rear wheel, and it would help then mean that you didn't have to have as much steering angle, which meant you didn't lose as much downforce,
That's so
which meant
clever.
you were quicker through the
Did
corner.
you ever forget which pedal was which, though?
You only, when you're learning how to use it, you only did that once because
Fine.
it resulted in a high-speed spin. But we managed to run that for more than half a season before eventually a photographer,
I remember.
Darren Heath, managed
Yeah.
to get a photograph inside the cockpit.
Good old Darren.
And then
No
he
one could understand
exposed it.
Yeah, no one could understand how they were doing what they were doing. And we were talking about testing when cars break down. All the photographers try and get underneath to see it. But yeah, as DC says, Mika broke down at the side of the track, and Darren Heath was close by, and he just put his arm inside the cockpit with his camera, click,
went-
click, click.
That's a shutter,
Went
by
back,
the way.
and I think it was before. I think it was before digital photography, so he had to go and get the negatives processed.
Yeah.
And then saw what he had, and it was like, we've got him.
Okay,
we
but
know what they're doing.
Can I just rewind a little bit into these innovations? Was it any good? It sounds great. Was it any good?
Yeah, it was 2-3 tenths a lap.
Okay. Well, everybody is talking about this Ferrari rear wing, right?
Yeah.
It's gone viral. Everyone's thinking, why didn't we do this? But have the numbers proven that it's worth as much as how cool it looks?
it's so difficult to say.
The question's got to be that although the regulation says that the wing has to be able to open and close to the straight line mode in under 0.4 of a second, there is a moment where as it inverts, it's clearly going to be momentarily, like an air brake. That has to have a negative effect, even if that's happening in 0.1 of a second. So we don't know as we speak whether they're going to run that in
Yeah.
Melbourne or whether they'll run it at all this
Yeah.
season.
People love to make big storylines. Everyone's desperate for the season to come back, so we're all grasping at straws about every little detail. Are we really putting Ferrari? Are we predicting Ferrari?
Well, just to answer your question there, first of all, if you look at where we started with these cars back in the Barcelona test that was not covered, to where we are after the second test in Bahrain, the cars already look drastically different.
Yeah.
So I think there's an element of whilst teams are sandbagging, a lot of them are at the front. Nobody wants to be the fastest dog. Sandbagging is essentially when teams up their fuel loads, lower their engine modes. They basically don't want to show their full hand because they don't want the competition to know that they've got X amount left in the bag. They want them to think, we're on target, we've got nothing more to look for.
I've never understood that though, because you've always got to know what is the potential of your package. So I get it, but at a certain point, you cannot find out for the first time how quick the car is in
Yeah.
qualifying.
Right.
And there's so much chat that Mercedes haven't turned the engine up fully yet, that McLaren weren't even running a race spec engine in their car yet because they didn't have it from Mercedes. I think one thing that's fascinating with Ferrari is they have shown their hand, and they've shown these upgrades, which if they run them in Australia or any races in the future, they will be very difficult, nigh on impossible to replicate by other teams. And that's key to this.
Well,
if it's a
here's the
silver
thing as
bullet, it's
well.
going to be so hard to copy.
It could be a complete distraction technique. They've had this in the as a little side project. Now other teams go and spend time looking at whether it works in CFD, which is the computational fluid dynamics, putting design team onto looking at it, which means they're then not utilising that resource to develop their own car.
Just to answer your question there, Jolie, obviously there's a lot of could this be the quickest team? Have we seen everything from each team? I personally think from what we have seen, what we've got access to, that Mercedes is still holding a lot back. So there's a lot of talk about Ferrari, and they were the quickest in terms of their final lap time. But Mercedes had a lot of potential, although they had a little bit of reliability issues, which I think is a bit of a concern. But look, I think between the two of them, we're looking at the two fastest teams. And obviously that's fast start is going to be a big aid to Ferrari. I think there's going to be no surprise between the two of those. But I think what's been a big shock is the woes of testing. Will, do you want to pick up on who's lost testing for sure?
Who's lost testing? Well, DC picked it up at the start. Aston Martin. Horrible pre-season test. I mean, this was supposed to be the car, right? The Adrian Newey car, no expense spared. Honda coming back to the sport, sort of full time. And it's the Honda engine that is the massive woe. And if we look back to the last time there was a big engine regulation change, Honda were with McLaren. They got it completely wrong. And it appears that they are massively, not just off the pace, but with an engine that is unreliable. And on the last day of testing, they only got 6 laps in.
Yeah, but not even timed laps. And when you say off the pace, can we just clarify that we're talking 4 seconds off the pace?
I mean, I was recently with the Aston team. I was with them pre-testing. The mood was great. And then I was with a few of them post-testing, and the mood in camp definitely wasn't great. And look, we've spoken a lot about Lewis potentially retiring, Max potentially leaving F1. Alonso, there's been a lot of talk about this being his last year. Who wouldn't, especially someone with, all his success? He'd want to go out on a bang.
Yeah, it's very difficult when you've got a down-in-power engine to actually know how good the car is, because a very good car, they've all got the same tyres. So the best car clearly takes those tyres to a higher limit. There's more energy going into those tyres. But if you've got the downforce, then there's less sliding and you take the potential. So there's no guarantee that, let's say Honda fix the problem like that and they suddenly have the same power. Maybe that'll bring the Aston Martin car into a window where it doesn't work. So I don't think it's as simple as saying Adrian and his team have done a great job and Honda, boo-hoo. The two have to work together. What is really surprising, and you mentioned, Will, there, that Honda's come back to Formula One, which might confuse some of our new listeners, because Honda were still supplying engines to Red Bull last year. But the point of that was they decided to pull out of Formula One, and it was scheduled that their last year would be last year. And in 6 months later, Lawrence Stroll presumably managed to persuade them to redesign a new engine for the new regulations, but they'd switched the programme off and then they had to gear it all back up again. Meantime, they've lost engineers and designers to other manufacturers, and it clearly shows brain power is not something that you can just do with headcount. You've got to have people with experience.
And of course, we've got, talking of a lack of experience, we've got the new team Cadillac, which everyone were assuming that we're going to be last of the grid. But they've got the Ferrari engine. Now, looking at the grid, are we thinking Aston could possibly fall behind them?
I think they could. And honestly, I think Cadillac have done themselves proud.
Yeah, I'm going to
turning up and doing every day of the shakedown and both pre-season tests. Look, they've had little issues here and there, but they've run well. They've run consistently, loads of laps on the board.
And their marketing, let's not take away from that as well, because I think for a lot of fans that might not have necessarily been watching testing, they took over Times Square for their
Super Bowl, baby.
Yes.
That in itself, the marketing, they're working overtime.
It's massive, and you can't underestimate the job that it takes to put a car on the grid from scratch. It's incredible, and yes, they have loads of experienced people on that team, but they've all come from different teams. They've all got to gel and mesh and ultimately create a culture from nothing. I think they've done great so far. Will they be slowest in Melbourne? Possibly, but not if Aston Martin are still looking as terrible as they are. But with that Ferrari engine, again, they could qualify last and make up 5-10 positions off the line.
Did you get any feel on the driver comparisons? Because I think I mentioned in a previous discussion between us all that it feels that Valtteri should have the upper hand in that team because he's still current. He stayed with Mercedes. He was doing the simulator work. He did some test events. And it feels that Checo, a Grand Prix winner, a guy that at a certain point in his life was the most consistent tyre preservation driver out there, but he kind of went off the boil at the end of his Red Bull career. So I think the spotlight's on him as an individual. So if we got a feel for, was he matching Valtteri? It's because they're doing split days with one car. We just won't know until we get to Melbourne.
It's tough to really figure that one out. And I think, one thing that we spoke about on one of the previous episodes is the fact that Valtteri and Checo are going to have to work together. It can't be mano.
But they have to beat each other as well.
They definitely do.
I don't think they do. Not this year.
Really?
No, I don't think they have to beat each other. Their role this year
Move that
is
team
not
up
to
the
one
order.
up each other. Their job this year is to make that team
Great again.
competitive.
Yeah.
It's the American team.
Just great. It's about consolidating and moving forward and learning and creating the foundations of what this team will be into the future. I think they will be given the mandate this season of, look, you guys are safe, right? You're safe no matter what happens. Is Colton Herta going to win the Formula 2 title and get a seat next year? Very, very, very unlikely. So just bed yourselves in and take it easy.
Wouldn't you say that expectations play such a big role into what we've seen in testing? I mean, you were talking about two teams who are at the back of the grid based off of what we've seen in testing, and we're giving them completely different reviews. Obviously, Aston Martin are a team that have a lot of experience, do not have any lack whatsoever of funding, two experienced drivers that are fresh on the grid. They've been here for a while and they are nowhere, and we're all saying they've lost testing. Whereas you've got Cadillac, who our expectations were really low. And yes, they're still at the back of the field, but I think, as you say, they've done themselves very proud. People keep asking them whether, they feel like a real F1 team. Are they going to add value to Formula One? And I think they've proven that, they're not playing games. So, the starting blocks for them are in a really good position compared to, I think, what a lot of people expected.
Yeah, look, I think just coming back to what Jolie was saying, their launch, the way they did that, I was speaking to some Apple executives as ahead of their big launch of their streaming service, and they were like, yeah, that's the kind of way Apple would look to do something. They were really impressed. And to have a company like that acknowledge that an automotive Formula One team have done something cool to bring brand awareness to the public is, I think, quite remarkable.
I think you've got also to look at Cadillac are a rookie team. Aston Martin have been around for a long time, as you say. So if you were to compare them, say, with drivers, Lewis didn't get a podium last year. Liam Lawson didn't get a podium last year. Both started off the season with a bit of difficulty, overcame their hurdles. Max season out. Pretty similar seasons. Liam, as a rookie, was seen to ultimately, by the end of it, have had a successful season and pulled it all together. Lewis's season was seen as a total disaster. Why the difference? One's got the experience, the other hasn't. Expectations.
Well, in Drive to Survive, that is coming out shortly and we'll be talking about, we see a specific driver, a specific rookie do very, very well, Kimi Antonelli, which warmed my heart because he is... I don't know how much you guys have worked with him, but he's such a nice guy off of the track. A little fun story.
He's a child.
He's just a nice kid. I was going to say, he's a nice kid.
I did an event with him, and he said to me, I don't leave the event until I take a photo with every single person that has queued, that I have access to. And his team was saying, he's so lovely, but as a Mercedes driver, he doesn't realise how exhausting that is.
Yeah, he'll grow out of that.
That's what I was going to say. Like, that's because it's his
On Mercedes,
it's not going to last.
On Mercedes, they're loophole. And Will, I'm going to lean on you to explain a little bit more about
please
that.
Don't.
But is it a storm in a teacup, or
No,
have we
it's
got a big
not.
advantage?
Not at all.
It's not a storm in a teacup at all. Naomi, I don't know if I want to pass this one over to you, but essentially it's all about compression ratios. Ultimately, it's about how much bang you get for your buck out of the engine. And Mercedes have found a way to get more bang for their buck out of the fuel being pushed through the engine while the engine is at temperature and running than when the tests are done on the engine, which is when they're cold. Now, the other teams were not happy about this because they'd all designed it within the intention of the regulation, whereas Mercedes saw a loophole and decided to maximise the availabilities within that loophole, such as Formula One.
What is a loophole? I mean, we make it sound like such a negative thing, and it's not.
No.
It's innovation. It's
genius.
We said the grey area in a set of regulations is where creativity comes out, where we see the likes of an Adrian Newey or whoever's found this loophole at Mercedes comes up with these creative things that everybody loves to hate because they didn't think about it themselves.
But they are hating.
Ferrari's upside down wing.
But they're getting rid
Loophole.
of this Mercedes loophole for this
Well,
summer break.
Are they? And this is the thing. So there will be a vote
Right.
between the teams, the F1 Commission, on whether or not to change the way in which the tests are done on the engine in order to do a test when the engine is warm rather than when it's at ambient temperature. So in other words, when the engine will be getting its biggest bang for its buck. But intriguingly, since all the teams that didn't have this technology decided to raise a fuss about it and raise their concerns, it now seems like they may be backtracking and wouldn't even vote to change the test should should they be given that opportunity, because they see an opportunity there potentially to do something.
DC, put us in the
similar.
cockpit. How much of an advantage do you think this will be? Potentially, they're talking about if there is a change, it's only going to be around the summer break. So that's like half a season worth of advantage.
Yeah, well, look, there's been many examples of where teams have found a loophole, found an advantage for half a season. I'm thinking Braun, Jensen, Button. They came out with a double diffuser, which gave them an advantage aerodynamically. That was then copied by the other teams by mid-season. And from mid-season on, they never won another Grand Prix. But they'd done enough accumulation of points in the beginning of the year to secure the championship. So anything that's giving you more horsepower and downforce are the two most important things in Formula One, because the horsepower will push you through the air and the downforce will help you in the corners. So it is a real advantage to Mercedes, to McLaren, who have the Mercedes engine, and to Williams, who have the Mercedes engine.
And Alpine.
And Alpine, of course, yeah,
Alpine.
completely excluded them. Amazingly, the Alpine team owned by the Renault group have closed down their engine manufacturing side.
theory.
And
Renault's
they bought
running
a
Mercedes power, Cadillac's running Ferrari power. It's a whole
All very
crazy
different
world.
put
but
together.
it's always been the case with the affiliation. Yeah, Mercedes have used some of the powertrains from Renault and some of the road cars, and Aston Martin use AMG Mercedes engines in their road cars. I think the economies of scale for these smaller manufacturers means that we see a lot of these collaborations.
Well, I just want to say that when people at home heard that there is a potential change in the regulations to address this loophole, people in the comment sections were up in arms. They said, no way. If they're cheating, it needs to be changed now. Why are you going to give them a head start? Well, exactly. They're not cheating. If anything, the others should have thought of this themselves. But because there's been so much sort of controversy about this online, I really want to hear from our listeners at home. What do you think? Do you think that Mercedes have totally figured it out, or do you think that the FIA should get their stuff together and change this at the beginning of the season if it is an issue?
Well,
Let
here's
us
the
know.
thing, actually, just on that, you mentioned the FIA, the Federation International Automobile. They are the governing body of Formula One. And I've read recently they're going, well, we're only about 20 people writing the rules, and Formula One teams have hundreds of people, which is why we didn't figure out the loophole and then close it down that the Mercedes engineers
Probably
and
don't want to
designers have
say
done.
that out loud.
Well, here's the thing though. If the regulation makers did a better job, quite frankly, of understanding the operational window of a Formula One car, an operational window of a Formula One car isn't sitting in a garage at ambient temperature. It is out on track, the engine temperature at 110 degrees, everything red hot, brakes at over 1,000 degrees. That's where they should be designing the rules and regulations.
Interestingly, we talked about Ferrari and their starts. Other teams having difficulties with their starts, it seems. Ferrari raised the issue of race starts and how difficult they would be to the FIA over a year ago. The FIA said, it'll all be fine. Ferrari designed their engine specifically because they knew this was going to be a
I saw
problem
somewhere
to
that
give them a
Christian
good race
raised
start.
it as well as an issue.
And now
Christian
everybody
Horner
else
raised
is
it.
panicking about it. Who's got it pinned?
Well, let's see if everything we're saying, everything the headlines are saying, everything you guys on socials are saying is going to come true. Who's going to be at the front? I would ask you guys for your predictions, but I fear this episode will be a lot longer than I know we have time for before everyone's got to head to their separate airports. But we want to hear from you guys on socials at Up to Speed Show. Comment, subscribe, leave a lovely review. And thank you, of course, for sending in lots of questions. We'll be answering those on Monday in a very special behind the scenes of Drive to Survive with our very own Will Buxton. So don't go anywhere. We've got one from someone I cannot wait to see in the paddock this year. And I know for sure we will see him in the paddock this year.
Hey, DC, Will, Naomi and Jolie, it's Gordon, right? Your favourite chef. Now, I heard you guys want me to cook for you in the paddock. Right, got a quick question for you. What do F1 drivers eat before a race? Second one, what's an F1 driver's favourite snack?
Well, I'll go first, but I'm curious to know what you would eat before your races. Grand Prix, the longest one would be 2 hours. So there are situations where you're starting to get hungry before the end of the race. An average Grand Prix is probably about 80 minutes, 90 minutes. So you don't actually need that much food just prior to the race. So it's all about getting the energy in from the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, making sure that you're at no point getting low energy. I used to have a fairly light meal before the Grand Prix. It would maybe be a sort of consommé with some rice and chicken, something light. I didn't like heavy pastas. I love pasta, but I would never eat it before getting in the car because I get sleepy afterwards. Definitely wasn't going to be eating a steak or something like that. So it's more about liquid. It's more about hydration, I think, than it is about the food just prior to the Grand Prix. You see some drivers nibbling on a banana or a protein bar or something before the race. I don't get that, honestly. First of all, I get it stuck in my teeth. I'd be having to pull out my teeth as I'm going round on the first lap of the race.
As a proud Scotsman, do you ever do porridge the morning of a race?
Love porridge, absolutely. And if it wasn't porridge, then if it was muesli or something, the key is put the muesli in the fridge the night before with the milk, the oat milk, whatever
mean
it is you
overnight
like.
oats?
Yeah, let it just soak it all up.
Yep.
Because then it doesn't swell in your stomach because you have a tendency then to overeat. So you've got to be very disciplined and not eat too much, which I think would be the same for a lot of sort of distance sports. I don't think it probably mattered for Usain Bolt in 9.8 seconds, but for a marathon runner or a Grand Prix driver, you've got to be a bit more disciplined.
Well, look, I wouldn't quite say that the race distance that I used to do was quite a 9.8 seconds Usain Bolt, but like this, we were driving more like sprint format. So your race is likely 30, 35, maximum 40 minutes. Even when I was racing in GTs, your stint was typically half an hour to 45 minutes. So yeah, slightly different. I've always been a bit of an intermittent faster, and typically before the race, like your nerves start to build. I never really was very hungry, so I typically have a snack like a banana, maybe some nuts for a little bit more energy. But yeah, whenever I did do longer endurance racing, like 24-hour races, then I took my nutrition a lot more seriously because more endurance format, you need that energy to peak at the right time. You don't want to be dipping off or dehydrating. But yeah, look, it really varies depending on the championship.
And what about your naughty snack afterwards? Because
Yeah,
for
that's our
me,
cheat meal. What's your cheat meal?
yeah, I wanted a cup
Burger
of
any
tea.
day.
After a Grand Prix, you could be Malaysia or something. I didn't want a burger. I wanted a cup of tea with 3 sugars. I wanted chocolate. I wanted anything sweet because you were just low on energy. And having driven for mainly British teams, in fact, only British teams, then a lot of tea is served within the engineering offices.
So you guys have a drinks bottle in the car. It's like a drinks bag.
Yes.
That
The smaller drivers do, because in my generation, being a taller driver, I was on the limited weight.
Weight saving.
So in Malaysia, I would take it because it was so hot. We were racing at 2:00 in the heat of the midday sun. But I didn't at other Grand Prix, and towards the end of my career, I would just chew some gum to keep my mouth wet, because if you carried a kilo of liquid, that was pure performance.
Are you going to ask if there was a cup of tea in the bag?
No, so yes, actually, because
I think Damon Hill used to
that
do
was
tea.
exactly what I was going to say. Damon would put a tea bag in his water bag in the car, because by the end of the Grand Prix, in a place that was
gets
really
hot.
hot, the water would get so hot that by the end of the race, he'd have a cup of tea in the car waiting for him.
That's wild. I mean, talking of after race meals, one of my favourite places I've ever eaten is in Monza, courtesy of Daniel Ricciardo and his team. There is a pizza place that Daniel used to always go to in
also
Monza.
Bruno.
Alambique, it's called.
Alambique or also Bruno?
Yes, we also get
just very
every
close to
year.
the track.
Yes,
It
on the
is
corner.
the best pizza ever.
The best pizza in the world. I'm very boring. I have a
I
margarita.
have another little
That-
story from the paddock in terms of what drivers eat. Firstly, Gordon, he would know this. I mean, we've got Gordon's garage at the race.
Yep.
Like, what is it, like 6 or 7 races of the year? Gordon's garage is there, and he's always providing delicious food. But last year, McLaren brought on a new hospitality team, and they added something very cool to their menu, which is basically what the drivers are having for lunch that day. And I cannot, for the life of me, remember what Oscar was having, probably because it was the slightly more boring option of the two. But I wanted to have the same lunch that an F1 driver was having on that day. And so I went for Lando's lunch, which was a chicken wrap with a side of mango and popcorn.
No.
I would not eat any of that.
I'd go to Ferrari and get pasta.
That is great. That is 100% right. And Max as well. I've heard that he just likes tomato soup as his comfort food.
Why not? Tin of Heinz tomato soup. Get in.
And I mean, talking
brands are available.
of
The foodie.
foodie, you know who I'm going to say, Yuki Tsunoda. I mean, off of the grid now, but he is not out of our hearts. He wants to, I'm not going to be surprised if he opens a restaurant. He wanted to, right?
He did. Actually, last year, when we were in Japan, they have these little, I mean, forgive me for not knowing the name. It's like these little dolls, and basically you color one eye in, and then when your wish comes true, you color in the second eye. And so I went to Yuki with one of the dolls, and I said, Yuki, please make a wish. And he obviously, it was his first weekend in the cockpit with Red Bull, so he wanted to do well, but he had two wishes. It was to do well with Red Bull, and the second one was to open his own restaurant in Japan. So
well, that might be happening sooner than he might have hoped, now that he's no longer in Formula One. And I noticed whilst over the weekend, prior to this the show, he was in Washington driving the Red Bull Formula One car, and he managed to set one of them on fire by basically not paying attention to the engine temperature. And he also managed, with the spare car, to run into the plastic barriers and break the front wing. Now, I think he was having an out-of-body experience, thinking he was still a Grand Prix driver, because the purpose of those show runs is to entertain, not torch a car and crash a car.
I remember going to the Renault launch back in, it was 03 or 04, and it was in Palermo in Sicily, and they were doing a demo run around the square in Palermo. Car breaks down, and I think it was Fernando, jumps out the car, runs away, crowd goes over the barrier, tears the car to pieces.
I had that happen.
For memorabilia.
Monza 95, I ran out of fuel on the, Monza 94, ran out of fuel coming out of the last corner and stopped just before the start-finish line. So I didn't actually complete the Grand Prix, but back in those days, reliability wasn't particularly good, so I was still classified as 5th place in the race. I get out of the car, because the Italian fans, you know, they all come onto the track for the podium ceremony. They ran onto the track. When they got the car back, the steering wheel was missing, the wing mirrors were missing, anything that could be taken from the car. And I sprinted to get away from the crowd.
Your tea bag?
And I didn't have a tea bag.
I thought that was going to end so much more wholesome than that they all pushed you across the line.
No, they are the animal instinct of a racing fan.
Wow,
they would rip the suit off your body. So
I love
on
it. DC was so good in his day, didn't even need to finish the Grand Prix, still finished top 5.
Well, you can see that your questions, and thank you very much, Gordon Ramsay, gets us all talking. So make sure to keep sending in those questions at Up to Speed Show on socials. Now, our next episode, it's about something very, very, very exciting, and your probably favourite and also least favourite thing to talk about, because let me guess, it's your most asked thing. Drive to Survive.
Drive to Survive comes out on Friday. So on Monday, we'll be answering all your questions about the truth behind Drive to Survive. I don't know what I can say and what I can't say.
Well, tell us, I'm curious to know, because it's an amazing production to bring together all of those elements. And then you're obviously there all the way through narrating, and well, you're there visibly in the show. So how long does it take you to actually put all the words together for it? Is it all in one sitting, or is it during the course of the year?
It's over a whole year. So we'll do one sitting before testing, one sitting after testing, and then 5 or 6 throughout the season, and then one at the end of the year to pick up anything that we need to do there. So it's a good 35, 40 hours sitting in a chair over the course of the year, and then they pick out the
stories
blandest,
of the
most
season.
Obvious statements that I've said over the course of the last 12 months. And
love
special meal
all the
beforehand.
gold is left on the floor, and I'm just left with the memeable content.
Do you watch it all back? Are you there like...
I watch it when everyone else sees it. Sometimes I'll get it a week before it comes out, but like literally, it's when it comes out is when you see it, I see it.
Proudest moment and most embarrassing moment?
Love that.
Oh, do you know what? Let's save that for the next episode.
Oh, nicely avoided.
Right. Well, there you heard it. We're going to be talking about it. We're going to be spilling all the gossip from Drive to Survive. We're saving it all for our next episode, so make sure you guys come and join us for that. In the meantime, if you want to contact us on socials, we're at Up to Speed Show, or if you want to send us an email, we're uptospeed@global.com. Now, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and follow so you never miss an episode. Our episodes come out every Monday and every Thursday. Thank you guys so much for such another wonderful episode.
Lovely to be back together.
Great.
Catch you on Monday.
Bye.
Bye.
This has been a Global Player original production.